Have you ever achieved something important, something you thought would finally make you feel whole, and yet, somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered, "It's still not enough." That silent ache, that feeling of being fundamentally unworthy no matter what you do, doesn't come from laziness or weakness. It comes from somewhere much older, a place where your story didn't begin with you, but with the woman who gave you life, and the pain she never had a chance to heal. This is the story of many daughters who were raised not only by their mothers, but by their mother's grief, their silence, their unprocessed trauma. This video is for you, the woman, who feels like she's always striving, always performing, always seeking a love that feels just out of reach. Today, we'll explore why daughters of wounded mothers often carry the invisible burden of low self-worth, and more importantly, how understanding this can begin the process of deep, radical healing. You are not broken. You are breaking patterns that were never yours to carry. And this is the beginning of your return. We rarely speak of the grief that comes from not being mothered in the way we needed. It's an invisible wound, often buried beneath decades of self-blame. You may have had food on the table. You may have been told you were loved. But emotional neglect is not the absence of physical care. It is the absence of being seen, understood, and accepted in your emotional truth. A wounded mother may love her daughter deeply, but when she hasn't healed her own story, her love can become conditional. It's often given when you're pleasing, withdrawn when you're emotional, encouraged when you perform, silenced when you feel. The daughter grows up learning that to be accepted, she must shrink, that her value lies not in who she is, but in who she becomes for others. And so begins the silent pact. I'll be what you need, even if it means I lose myself. If you've spent your life trying to earn love, approval, or simply a sense of safety, you are not alone. This isn't your flaw. It's a mirror of a lineage that didn't know how to give what it never received. But that mirror can be shattered. You can learn to see yourself not through the broken reflection of someone else's pain, but through the eyes of your own soul. Carl Jung once wrote that the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent, and nowhere is this more true than in the dynamic between a mother and daughter. The mother is often the first mirror. From the moment a child is born, she begins to reflect not just the world, but the mother's internal world. Her beliefs, fears, regrets, and longings silently shape the emotional climate of the home. If she is ashamed of her own vulnerability, she may see yours as weakness. If she never felt worthy, she may unintentionally teach you that your worth must be earned. In this way, daughters of wounded mothers grow up internalizing a deep message. You must be perfect to be loved. And perfection, as we know, is a mask, a defense, a performance that never satisfies the longing for authentic connection. You might become the overachiever, the caretaker, the empath who reads a room before she reads herself, or the woman who, no matter how much love she's given, still feels unworthy of it, because it never felt safe to receive it unconditionally. This is not a conscious choice. This is survival. You adapted to the emotional rules of your household, the way a flower adapts to the direction of the sun. But now, that sun has set, and your growth depends not on someone else's light, but on your own. Let's talk about the emotional consequences that follow you into adulthood. It often starts as a whisper, the hesitation before celebrating yourself, the fear of being too visible, the shame that follows success, as if thriving means you've betrayed someone. Many daughters of wounded mothers carry a subconscious loyalty to their mother's suffering. They dim their light because it hurts to shine when she couldn't. Relationships become minefields of unmet needs. You attract partners who echo the emotional unavailability of your early life. You become the emotional caretaker, the strong one, even when you're crumbling inside. And worst of all, you second-guess your own pain. You tell yourself it wasn't bad enough to matter. But let this be said clearly. Your pain matters, even if no one screamed, even if no one hit, even if it was quiet, because emotional neglect is loud in its silence. It teaches you to abandon yourself, to distrust your own emotions, to feel guilty for having needs. This is not your natural state. This is programming, and programming can be rewritten, not by blaming, but by remothering yourself with the love you never received. There's a myth we carry, that in order to heal, we must reconcile with our mother, that we must return to her, understand her, or even forgive her. And while these can be beautiful outcomes, they are not prerequisites for healing. Sometimes, the mother is not safe. Sometimes she is still deeply wounded, unavailable, or incapable of seeing you as separate from her. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your soul is to set boundaries, not out of anger, but out of reverence for your own becoming. You can love someone and still name the harm. You can honor her story and still choose to end the cycle. You are allowed to heal even if she never changes. This is where your power begins, when you stop waiting for the apology, for the validation, for the recognition that may never come, and instead you give those things to yourself, not in defiance, but in devotion. Devotion to the woman you were always meant to be before the wound. So how do you begin to reconnect with your true sense of self-worth? It starts with noticing the voice inside your head. Is it kind or does it sound eerily familiar, like the tone of someone who raised you? Many of us internalize the critical voice of a wounded mother and make it our own. We continue the cycle, not because we want to, but because it's the only voice we were taught to trust. Begin here. Every time you hear that voice say, "You're too much," or "You'll never be enough," gently interrupt it. Ask, whose voice is that? Is it mine, or is it inherited? And then offer yourself a new sentence. One that sounds like love, one that feels like truth. This is what it means to remother yourself, to give yourself the words, the safety, the softness you were denied. It may feel strange at first, even false, but over time, your nervous system begins to believe you. Your inner child begins to come out of hiding, and that's when healing truly begins, when your soul realizes that it is finally safe to be seen. Healing the mother wound is not about rewriting her story, it's about reclaiming your own. There comes a moment in every daughter's life when she realizes, I don't need to keep hurting myself to stay loyal to someone else's pain. That moment is not always loud. It often arrives in silence while washing dishes, sitting in therapy, or staring at the ceiling in the early hours, asking, why do I always feel not enough, no matter what I do? And then, softly, you begin to remember. You remember the first time you shrunk yourself to avoid her anger, the first time you held back tears because your sadness made her uncomfortable, the first time you learned that her needs mattered more than yours, and so you stopped having them. But memory is not here to punish you. It's here to show you where the light was lost, so you can begin to return. You are not here to stay small. You are not here to be the emotional container for someone else's unprocessed wounds. You are not here to mother the mother who could not mother herself. You are here to become whole. And that wholeness does not require her permission. Reclaiming your self-worth means grieving what never was. And grief is not weakness, it's a sacred rite of passage. You may grieve the mother you never had, the one who would have held you in your fear, celebrated you in your joy, taught you that your voice mattered. You may grieve the safety you never knew, the validation you never received, the innocence you were forced to outgrow too early. This grief has no timeline. It doesn't follow neat stages. It moves in spirals, one memory, one trigger, one release at a time. Let it come, because every tear you shed in truth is a thread being rewoven into your soul. Every ache you name is a door being opened inside your nervous system. Every time you say, that wasn't okay, you are choosing yourself over the silence. And slowly, piece by piece, you begin to feel something unfamiliar. And yet, ancient. You begin to feel whole. Not because someone finally gave you what you needed, but because you stopped abandoning yourself to chase it. There's a kind of freedom that emerges when you no longer need to be understood by the person who wounded you. When you no longer beg for validation, but create your own. When you no longer view love as something to earn, but something to remember. Because here's the truth, you were always worthy. You were worthy as a child, with messy emotions. You were worthy when you cried too much, or not enough. You were worthy even when she couldn't see it. She couldn't give you what she didn't have. That doesn't excuse the harm, but it explains the inheritance. And the gift of awareness is that you don't have to pass it on. You don't have to become her. You don't have to fear your own emotions, your own power, your own voice. You get to write a new story, not in reaction to her, but in devotion to you. So what does that new story look like? It looks like saying no without guilt, like resting without justification, like trusting your body's signals instead of overriding them. It looks like feeling your feelings all the way through, not just the convenient ones. It looks like forgiving yourself for the years you spent trying to fix what was never yours to carry. And above all, it looks like belonging to yourself fully, unapologetically, and without condition. The mother wound may have planted seeds of doubt, but your soul knows who you are. Your soul remembers the girl who danced without shame, who asked questions without fear, who didn't apologize for her joy. She is still there. She is waiting to be chosen, not by your mother, not by the world, but by you. This work, this sacred, soul-level reparenting, is not easy. It requires tenderness, patience, honesty, and often a kind of grief that words can't touch. But on the other side of that grief is something extraordinary. It is the rebirth of your inner mother, the part of you that knows how to hold space for your pain. The part of you that whispers, "You are allowed to rest." The part of you that looks into your own eyes and says, "You are enough. You always were." This is the mother you become for yourself. This is the love you no longer wait for because you've built it inside your own chest. And when that happens, when you learn to mother yourself with softness instead of criticism, presence instead of absence, something else begins to shift. You stop repeating the pain. You start transmitting peace. And the world feels that. Every daughter who heals becomes a bridge between generations, not only for her children, but for the ancestors who never had this chance. You don't just heal for yourself. You heal for the women who whispered their pain into pillows, for the girls who were told to smile and stay small, for the mothers who never knew another way. And in doing so, you become the first to say, "It ends with me." The first to feel without shame. The first to speak what was once unspeakable. The first to live with worthiness, not because of what she does, but because of who she is. And that is a revolution. Quiet, sacred, powerful. So if you find yourself struggling with low self-esteem, with a voice inside that says you're too much or not enough, with a life that looks full but feels empty, know this. It's not your fault. It's not too late. And you are not alone. You are in the middle of the sacred unlearning of remembering the self that existed before the pain of building a home within your own heart. Let this be your reminder. You do not have to be perfect to be loved. You do not have to shrink to be safe. You do not have to carry the wound to prove your loyalty. You are allowed to rise. And rising doesn't mean you leave her behind. It means you honor her by becoming what she could not, by choosing healing over silence, by choosing truth over performance, by choosing yourself again and again and again. If this spoke to something deep inside you, trust that it's not random. You were meant to hear this now. You were meant to remember. And as you walk this path, sometimes slow, sometimes messy, know that you are not walking it alone. Thousands of daughters across the world are remembering with you, choosing with you, healing with you, and in that shared remembering, we reclaim the sacred birthright of every woman, to be seen, to be held, to be worthy, exactly as she is.